You ever felt him pulling away even when you know he still wants you? Like his silence is louder than anything he could ever say, and yet deep down, you sense he's thinking about you, missing you, craving you, but still, nothing, no call, no message, just distance. It makes no sense, right? But what if I told you the reason he hasn't contacted you isn't because he doesn't care, it's because he cares too much in all the wrong ways. He thinks about you more than you realize. You cross his mind in the quiet moments, when he's driving, when he's alone, when he's scrolling through photos that take him back to something he pretends he's over. But he doesn't reach out, not because he doesn't want to, not because he doesn't crave that connection. It's because deep down, there's a fear bigger than his longing. His ego is wired to protect him from pain, from rejection, from the possibility that the woman he desires the most might not want him back. And that fear speaks louder than his feelings. For a lot of men, reaching out to someone they crave feels like standing naked on a battlefield, vulnerable, exposed. It's not just about sending a text or picking up the phone. It's about risking their pride, because if he sends that message and you don't respond, or worse, you respond with cold indifference, his ego takes a blow he doesn't think he can handle. So he waits. He creates stories in his mind. Maybe you're happier without him. Maybe you've moved on. Maybe reaching out will make him look desperate, weak, or foolish. These thoughts aren't always based on truth, but they become the walls he hides behind. There's also the pressure of how he thinks he needs to show up. If he still has feelings, but knows he's not ready to be the man you deserve, he'll stay silent rather than disappoint you again. Craving you doesn't automatically make him capable of loving you the right way. And that's where ego and fear collide. Because wanting you isn't enough. He has to believe he's enough. And if there's any doubt in his mind, he'll avoid putting himself in a position where he might be reminded that he isn't. Men aren't as emotionless or careless as they might appear. They just often lack the emotional language to say what's going on beneath the surface. So instead of expressing longing, they express silence. Instead of saying, "I miss you," they ghost. Instead of showing vulnerability, they double down on pride. And from your side, it looks like he doesn't care. But internally, he might be battling a storm of emotions he doesn't know how to handle. His craving becomes a secret he keeps from you and sometimes from himself. And in a world where being vulnerable is seen as weakness, many men would rather sit with the ache than risk rejection that confirms their worst fear, that you don't want them anymore. Even if he's watching your stories, checking your posts, asking mutual friends about you, it doesn't always translate into action. Because action requires courage, and craving you is safe as long as it stays in his head. The moment he moves toward you, he's at risk of judgment, of being too late, of hearing words he's not ready for. So he chooses safety over satisfaction, he chooses ego over emotion, and you're left wondering how someone who once couldn't go a day without you can now pretend you don't exist. He sits with his phone in his hand staring at your name, thinking about what he would say if he had the nerve to send that message. He rewrites the same text in his head over and over, but he never sends it. Why? Because in his mind, you've probably already moved on. Maybe you've found someone else, maybe you've stopped thinking about him entirely. And just the thought of that is enough to keep him silent. Men often live in the gap between what they feel and what they assume. Even when their desire for you is strong, their assumptions are often stronger. If you haven't reached out, he reads that as a clear sign that you don't care anymore. That your silence is intentional, and he uses that silence as proof that making a move would only lead to rejection. But the male mind is wired in a way that interprets non-response as finality. If you're not making it obvious that you still care, he starts to create stories to fill the blanks. He might think you're out living your best life, completely unaffected by the void he feels. And rather than risk confirming that story by reaching out and being met with emotional distance, he keeps quiet, because in silence, he can still fantasize. He can still imagine you miss him too. The moment he reaches out and doesn't get the response he's hoping for, that illusion dies, so he holds on to it tightly. This fear isn't always rational, but it's powerful. He could have had deep moments with you, shared laughter, memories, late-night talks, maybe even love. But time changes how people interpret the past. And if the breakup or the distance was messy, he may convince himself that your heart has hardened, that your feelings have vanished. Even if he's the one who pulled away, even if he's the reason things fell apart, he might still be waiting for a green light from you, something that tells him he's still wanted. It's not that he doesn't think about you, he does. It's just that his thoughts are filtered through fear. Fear that you're done, that reaching out would make him look weak, that you'll remind him of all the reasons you left, and so he waits, he watches, he checks in from a distance. But he never crosses that line. He doesn't want to be the one who cares more, even if in private, he's still haunted by the space you once filled in his life. Sometimes men need more than time, they need certainty, and without it they will stay paralyzed. They want to know the door is open before they knock. But if you're silent, if you're strong, if you've chosen not to chase or reach out first, he reads that as finality, not self-respect. He convinces himself you've forgotten, and he buries his craving under pride, never realizing that his silence is costing him the one thing he still desires. He wants you in the way someone wants sunlight on a cold day. There's a hunger in him for the way you made him feel, seen, alive, important. He craves your energy, your presence, the way you challenged him and made him feel like he could be more. But the truth is, that craving doesn't automatically come with the maturity to show up for you the way you need. Wanting someone is easy. Wanting them with the weight of responsibility, that's where many men begin to pull away. They confuse desire with readiness. And deep down, he knows that having you isn't just about late-night conversations or magnetic chemistry. Having you means effort. It means consistency. It means vulnerability. And those things terrify him more than losing you does. He may look at your pictures, remember how you made him laugh, replay moments in his head, and still not call. Because calling would mean stepping into the role of someone dependable. Someone who doesn't just take from you emotionally, but gives back. And that requires emotional discipline, which not every man has, no matter how strong his desire might be. When a man isn't ready to hold space for a real relationship, one where he shows up, stays accountable, and doesn't run when things get uncomfortable, he often chooses silence instead. It's not because he doesn't feel anything, it's because he feels too much and doesn't know how to manage it. Some men are addicted to the emotional high of a woman's love, but allergic to the work it takes to sustain it. He remembers how good it felt to be around you. He misses the way you made him feel like he mattered. But that memory alone won't transform him into the kind of partner you need. And if he senses that stepping toward you again means dealing with expectations, conversations, healing, or growth, he may pull back. Not because you're asking for too much, but because he doesn't yet know how to give anything meaningful without losing control of himself. The irony is, he might think he's protecting both of you by staying silent. In his mind, it's better to crave you from a distance than to re-enter your world only to disappoint you again. He knows that once he opens that door, the dynamics change. You'll ask for truth, you'll need consistency, and he's not sure he can provide that, so he hides his longing behind logic. He tells himself, she's better off without me, or it's not the right time, and those thoughts become a convenient excuse to stay distant even while he misses you like crazy. Craving doesn't equal commitment. A man can ache for your presence while simultaneously running from the version of himself he'd have to become to deserve it. He might romanticize the past while avoiding the responsibility of building a future, and in that in-between space, where desire exists but maturity doesn't, you're left with silence. Not because he doesn't want you, but because he doesn't want to face what loving you properly would actually require. He sits quietly in his own world, hoping for a sign from you. Something small, a like on his post, a quick reply to his story, a subtle comment. He's not reaching out, not because he doesn't want to, but because he's waiting for a signal that tells him it's safe. In his mind, you hold the key. If you show even a flicker of interest, he'll take that as permission to move closer. Without that flicker, he assumes the door is closed. Many men operate from this place, not of bold, confident pursuit, but of cautious testing. He doesn't want to fall flat. He doesn't want to look like the one who still cares if you've already let go. There's a part of him that believes you should be the one to make the first move, especially if he's the one who walked away. Or maybe he's still battling the voice in his head that says, "Don't look too eager." For him, silence isn't absence, it's strategy. He's measuring his steps, trying to protect his pride, hoping that you'll break first, that you'll drop a hint, anything, to show him you're still emotionally available. Because deep down, he doesn't want to get hurt. He may crave you, dream of you, and still stay frozen in inaction because his emotions are tangled in fear. He replays the past and watches for any moment that might justify reaching out. Maybe he thinks if you had just said a little more before things ended, maybe if you looked more hurt, more affected, he would have known you cared. But your silence has him questioning everything. He doesn't realize that you might be waiting on him just as much as he's waiting on you. He assumes your quiet means you've moved on, while his quiet is just a waiting room filled with doubts and what-ifs. Just a waiting room filled with doubts and what-ifs. It becomes a game neither of you wants to play, but both end up stuck in. Men aren't always driven by logic in these situations. They're driven by signs, emotional green lights. And if you haven't given him one, even subtly, he takes it as a red. In his world, your lack of a breadcrumb means rejection. And rejection is worse than missing you. So he sits back and watches. Maybe he checks your profile. Maybe he asks someone how you've been. But he doesn't speak up because in his mind, the silence from your side is a message in itself. Sometimes he even tells himself that if you really cared, you would have reached out by now. That thought lets him off the hook. It helps him justify his own passivity. Meanwhile, his heart keeps pulling him towards you, but he keeps pushing it down, telling himself the risk is too high without reassurance from you. So he waits. He waits for you to say something that gives him hope. A little opening, a little softness, something that says you can still come back. Until then, the silence grows louder, not because the feelings are gone, but because no one wants to be the first to break it. He's sitting in silence, not because he doesn't care, but because he thinks he's winning. In his mind, silence is power. Not texting you back, not calling, not checking in. That's his way of maintaining the upper hand. He believes that by staying quiet, he's controlling the dynamic between you two. The longer he waits, the more convinced he becomes that you're the one growing anxious, wondering, replaying everything in your mind. That's the game he's playing, a game of emotional chicken. Who breaks first? Who gives in? Who reaches out? And in his version of winning, the one who stays silent longest holds the control. For some men, this mindset is rooted in pride. They equate expressing emotion with weakness. Vulnerability becomes a risk, not a strength. So even if he misses you every single day, even if you're constantly in his thoughts, he won't let that show. He thinks withholding attention makes him look more desirable, more confident, more in demand. He's been conditioned to believe that the person who appears to care less wins, and he's trying to be that person even while craving your presence like air. But what he doesn't understand is that the game he thinks he's winning is actually pushing you further away. He's using silence as a strategy, not realizing it's sabotaging any real chance he has with you. He might be watching your social media, seeing how you carry yourself, trying to read between the lines. But instead of showing up and being honest about how he feels, he hides behind calculated distance. He wants you to feel the void he left. He wants you to notice his absence. He hopes that by pulling away, you'll lean in. And when you don't, it frustrates him, but he still refuses to break the silence because he's too invested in the illusion that this is how he keeps control. Sometimes he even tells himself that this is a smart move, that silence will make you realize his value, that you'll miss him more if he stays away. And if you are someone who chased validation, it might work. But when you're someone who values self-respect, it doesn't. What he calls playing it cool is actually emotional immaturity. It's fear disguised as confidence. And while he might act unbothered on the surface, there's turmoil underneath. He checks his phone, hoping to see your name. He thinks about sending a message, wonders what you'd say, but doesn't press send. He wants to reach out, but the fear of looking too eager stops him. So instead, he convinces himself that silence is strength. But what's really happening is he's gambling with something real. He's risking connection for control. And that gamble rarely pays off because while he's trying to look like the one who doesn't care, you're slowly learning to live without him. Every day he stays silent, he thinks he's becoming more powerful in your eyes, when really he's becoming more distant. What he forgets is that attraction is fueled by connection, not confusion. And desire can only survive so long in a vacuum. Eventually, the silence he believes gives him power starts to build a wall you won't climb anymore. He's playing a game with no winner because if you do finally reach out, he doesn't feel strong, he feels validated, which only feeds his insecurity. And if you don't, he sits in quiet disappointment, wondering how someone he still craves could let him go so easily. He doesn't realize that you were never trying to win, you were just hoping for something real. And real doesn't show up through silence, it shows up through courage. There's a part of him that's still trying to take back the emotional power he felt he lost with you. Maybe at one point he opened up more than he wanted to. Maybe you saw a version of him that no one else did, one that wasn't polished, guarded, or in control. And while he craved that connection in the moment, part of him later felt exposed, like he gave away too much. So now, his silence isn't just about avoiding you, it's about regaining emotional balance, trying to feel like he's the one in charge again. It's not that he doesn't miss you, it's that he's trying to rewrite the narrative so he doesn't feel like the vulnerable one anymore. Some men can't handle the idea that a woman held more influence over their emotions than they held over hers. If you were the one he felt more for, if you were the one who made him chase, who challenged him, who got under his skin in a way no one else did, then he may have left the situation feeling off-center. And men who don't know how to deal with that imbalance often go quiet. not because their feelings are gone, but because they want to reassert their strength by being distant. It's their way of regaining control, even if it costs them something meaningful. He might replay old conversations, remember how you reacted to things, how deeply you seemed to care, and in that memory he decides that you were the one who needed him more. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. It becomes the story he tells himself to stay strong in the silence. By convincing himself that he was the one who had the emotional upper hand, he protects himself from the vulnerability he felt. That silence becomes armor. And the more days that pass without contact, the more he convinces himself that he's the one who walked away with dignity. This isn't always a conscious game either. Sometimes he genuinely believes he's moved on, that he doesn't care anymore, that staying silent is just part of letting go. But underneath that surface is often a power struggle with himself, a desire to feel unaffected, to prove he's not emotionally dependent on you. And the only way he knows how to do that is to stay distant and detached, even if it feels unnatural. That inner conflict between craving you and needing to feel emotionally dominant creates a cycle where he does nothing, even while everything inside him wants to reach out. Well, he doesn't realize that by focusing so hard on recreating the emotional power dynamic, he's actually running from the part of himself that connected with you the most, the version of him that was soft, real, and maybe even scared, but open. And instead of honoring that side, he suppresses it and calls it strength. He thinks silence makes him the winner, but deep down he knows he's just hiding behind it. Because contact means vulnerability, and vulnerability reminds him of how much you actually mattered. So if you're sitting there wondering how a man who once seemed so into you could now be so silent, understand this. It's not always because he doesn't care. Often it's because he cares more than he knows how to handle. His silence is layered with fear, pride, ego, confusion, and emotional immaturity. He may crave you deeply, but feel paralyzed by the fear of rejection, the pressure of responsibility, or the need to protect his image. He might be waiting on a signal from you, convincing himself he's winning by not speaking first, or simply trying to regain the power he feels he lost. But no matter the reason, the silence says more about him than it ever says about you. Because a man who truly values you, who is ready, emotionally honest, and strong in his character, won't let pride, fear, or power games get in the way of showing up. So don't waste your peace trying to decode silence. Let him sit in it if he chooses. Because the right man won't make you wonder where you stand. He'll have the courage to speak, not just the craving to feel.